Sir, you need to move. That seat isn't for people like you. The words cut through gate 47 like a blade. Kevin Washington stood motionless, his crisp white shirt catching the harsh terminal lighting. His boarding pass read 2A First Class. His skin told a different story to the blonde gate agent staring him down. Caroline Matthews, 20-something with a company smile turned weapon, raised her voice. These tickets cost $4,800. Are you sure you didn't find this somewhere? 200 passengers turned. Phones emerged from purses. The morning crowd at Denver International had found their entertainment. Kevin adjusted his platinum cufflinks, the ones with the subtle KW monogram, and said nothing. His calm felt dangerous. His silence spoke volumes. The question hung in recycled air. How does a man maintain such composure when the world decides he doesn't belong? Have you ever been judged by your appearance in the most public, humiliating way possible? Caroline's voice carried across the gate area like a public announcement. We've had problems with fraudulent upgrades lately. I need to verify this ticket wasn't acquired improperly. The word acquired dripped with implication. Kevin's jaw tightened imperceptibly. His Patek Philippe watch, limited edition, worth more than most cars, caught the fluorescent light as he checked the time. "Step aside, please," Caroline continued, her tone shifting from suspicious to commanding. "For other passengers' comfort." A businessman in a rumpled suit shook his head. I knew something was off. His wife nodded agreement. Their son, maybe 8 years old, stared openly at Kevin with the brutal honesty of childhood curiosity. Kevin's phone buzzed. The screen showed, "Board meeting, 2 p.m. Urgent." He declined the call without looking up. His leather portfolio, handcrafted, expensive, remained tucked under his arm like a shield. 7:00 a.m. 30 minutes to boarding. "Sir, are you listening?" Caroline's patience evaporated. "I asked you a question." Kevin's voice came low, measured. "I heard you." Then you'll understand why I need to see additional identification. Credit cards. Proof of purchase. Around them, the terminal hummed with morning chaos. Flight announcements echoed off glass walls. Coffee shops filled with the pre-dawn crowd. But Gate 47 had become a theater, and Kevin was the unwilling star. A woman with silver hair whispered to her companion, "Those people always try to game the system." Her companion nodded knowingly. Their conversation wasn't meant to be private. Kevin positioned his phone carefully, the camera facing outward. His thumb moved across the screen with practiced precision. He was documenting everything. Every word, every face, every witness to his humiliation. 7:05 a.m. Gate supervisor approaches. Janet Rodriguez materialized beside Caroline, her supervisor badge catching the light. "What's the situation here?" "Suspicious first-class passenger," Caroline explained, her voice carrying newfound authority. "Ticket doesn't match his presentation." Janet's eyes swept Kevin from head to toe. His tailored blazer, his Italian leather shoes, his perfectly knotted tie. None of it registered as belonging in first class. Not on him. "We have protocols," Janet said, her voice official and cold. "For suspicious passenger behavior." Kevin's phone buzzed again. This time, he answered. "Not now," he said quietly. "I'm handling a situation at Den." The caller's voice was urgent enough to be heard by nearby passengers. "Should I make the call?" Kevin's response was barely audible. "Not yet." He ended the call and returned to his strategic silence. His cufflinks caught the light again. Those platinum pieces with the mysterious KW monogram that no one seemed to notice. 7:08 a.m. Emissary. Security called. Airport security to Gate 47, Janet announced into her radio. Her voice carried the weight of authority, the promise of escalation. The crowd thickened. Passengers boarding other flights detoured past Gate 47 to witness the spectacle. Phones appeared like flowers blooming in spring, dozens of them, all recording the same scene from different angles. Kevin stood in the center of it all, a study in controlled composure. His breathing remained steady. His posture spoke of quiet confidence. But his eyes held something else entirely. A family of 4 pressed closer. The father held his phone at eye level, live streaming to his social media. "You're not going to believe what's happening at Denver Airport right now," he narrated to his audience. "They're questioning this black guy's first-class ticket." The comments flooded his screen in real time. Typical airline racism. "Call the news. This is why I don't fly. Sue them." Kevin saw none of it. His focus remained laser-sharp on the unfolding drama. He was playing a game whose rules only he understood. 7:12 AYEM. Security arrives. Officer Martinez appeared with the efficiency of practiced authority. His uniform commanded immediate respect. His presence shifted the entire dynamic. "Passenger Kevin Washington," he read from his notepad. "Please step forward." The use of Kevin's full name over the gate area speakers turned every head. 200 passengers now knew his identity. The humiliation was complete and public. "I need to see identification," Officer Martinez continued. "And I'll need you to empty your pockets." Kevin complied with the calm precision of a man who had expected this moment. His wallet revealed multiple platinum credit cards, a Colorado driver's license, and something else. A black card with minimal text that Officer Martinez studied with growing confusion. "Sir," the officer said, his voice suddenly uncertain, "this card is mine," Kevin finished quietly. The crowd pressed closer. The phones multiplied. Social media exploded with real-time updates from a dozen different angles. Kevin Washington, successful, dignified, humiliated, had become the unwitting star of a viral moment. But he wasn't fighting back. He wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't demanding justice or respect or basic human dignity. He was waiting. 7:15 AEM minus final boarding call in 15 minutes. "Ladies and gentlemen," the gate agent announced, "we'll begin boarding first-class passengers shortly." 3 white passengers approached the gate with their boarding passes. No one asked for additional identification. No one questioned their right to be there. No one demanded proof of purchase. Kevin watched it all with the quiet intensity of a man collecting evidence. His phone buzzed one final time. He glanced at the screen, then typed a single message: "Execute Protocol 7. The response came immediately. "Confirmed. Standing by." Kevin slipped the phone into his pocket and adjusted his cufflinks one last time. Those platinum pieces with the KW monogram, the detail everyone kept missing, caught the light like a signal. In 15 minutes, everything would change. 7:15 AAME. Final boarding call in 15 minutes. The gate area buzzed with electric tension. Kevin Washington stood at the center of a growing storm, his composure unshakable despite the chaos swirling around him. Officer Martinez studied the mysterious black card again, his confusion deepening. "Sir, I've never seen credentials like this. What exactly—" "It's legitimate," Kevin interrupted gently. His voice carried no anger, no frustration, just quiet certainty. Caroline stepped forward, her authority bolstered by the crowd's attention. "Officer, we can't let suspicious passengers board based on fancy cards. Anyone can get those made online." The live-streaming father adjusted his phone angle, narrating to his growing audience. "The security guard looks confused, guys. This is getting intense. The airline staff is really pushing this." Comments flooded his screen faster than he could read them. His viewer count climbed past 5,000 and kept rising. 718 AYEM. Management escalation. Janet Rodriguez's radio crackled. Supervisor Rodriguez, we have Regional Manager Thompson en route to Gate 47. The announcement sent ripples through the crowd. Regional Manager meant corporate authority. This was escalating beyond simple gate agent discrimination into something bigger. Kevin's phone vibrated with a text message. He glanced at the screen. Protocol 7 ready. Awaiting your signal. He typed back, not yet. Let it build. A businesswoman in designer clothing approached Officer Martinez. Excuse me, but I'm also first class. Do you need to see my identification? The officer looked embarrassed. Ma'am, that won't be necessary. Why not? She pressed. If you're checking everyone's credentials, we're not checking everyone, Caroline interjected quickly. Just specific situations. The woman's eyebrows rose. Specific how? The question hung in the air like smoke. No one answered. 722 AYEM Management Manager arrives. David Thompson appeared with a stride of corporate authority. His expensive suit and no-nonsense demeanor commanded immediate attention. At 45, he carried himself like a man who solved problems with decisive action. What's the situation? He demanded. Caroline launched into her explanation with renewed confidence. Suspicious first-class passenger. Ticket authenticity questionable. Refusing to provide adequate verification. Thompson's eyes assessed Kevin with the cold efficiency of corporate risk management. Sir, I'm Regional Manager Thompson. I need to resolve this quickly. We have a schedule to maintain. Kevin's response was measured, calm. I understand your position. Good. Then you'll understand why I need to see proof of purchase for this ticket. Credit card statements, receipt, anything that validates this transaction. The crowd pressed closer. The phones multiplied. Social media exploded with real-time updates from a dozen different angles. Kevin reached into his leather portfolio. The movement was deliberate, almost ceremonial. Every eye in the gate area focused on his hands. 725 AYEM, the documentation moment. Here's what you need, Kevin said, producing a folder. Thompson opened it, expecting to find ticket receipts or credit card statements. Instead, he found something that made his face drain of color. This is... Thompson's voice caught. This can't be right. It's right, Kevin confirmed, quietly. Officer Martinez leaned closer to see the documents. His eyes widened. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Kevin said. This is exactly what I expected to happen. Caroline grabbed the folder from Thompson's hands. Her confident expression crumbled as she read. Oh my God. Oh my God. The live-streaming father caught her reaction on camera. Something just happened, guys. The airline people look like they've seen a ghost. 728. IEMM. The power shift. Thompson's corporate composure shattered. Mr. Washington, I had no idea. If I had known... You had no idea because you didn't need to know, Kevin interrupted. You made assumptions based on what you saw, not what you knew. Janet Rodriguez grabbed the folder next. Her hands shook as she read, This is impossible. This has to be fake. Call the corporate office, Kevin suggested calmly. Ask them about Kevin Washington. Ask them about the 2 p.m. board meeting. Ask them about Protocol 7. The crowd sensed the shift in power dynamics. Phones captured every moment as airline authority figures scrambled to understand what they were facing. Caroline's voice came out as a whisper. We need to call this in, right now. 7:30 AIEMM, the corporate call. Thompson's phone call was brief but devastating. His side of the conversation was overheard by dozens of passengers. Yes, I need to verify. Kevin Washington. Yes, I'll hold. What? Are you sure? When? Oh, God. Oh. He ended the call and looked at Kevin with something approaching terror. Sir, I need to speak with you privately. No, Kevin said firmly. Nothing private. Everything public. Everything documented. The live streaming father's viewer count passed 10,000. Comments exploded across social media platforms. The story was spreading beyond the gate area, beyond the airport, beyond Denver. Mr. Washington, Thompson began, his voice now respectful, almost pleading. There's been a terrible mistake. No mistake, Kevin replied. This is exactly what I was documenting. 7:32 IEM AM. The revelation builds. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Sir, I need to apologize. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask, Kevin interrupted. You assumed. You profiled. You humiliated. All while the cameras were rolling. The crowd was silent now, sensing something massive was about to unfold. The phones remained focused on Kevin, but the energy had shifted completely. Caroline made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. If there's been a misunderstanding, we can resolve this quietly. No need for complication. Kevin's smile was cold and precise. Too late for quiet. This is public now. All of it. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text. Execute Protocol 7. Full deployment. The response came immediately. Confirmed. All systems active. 7:35 a.m. The final escalation. Thompson's phone rang. He answered with shaking hands. Yes? Right now? All of them? But that's... Yes, sir. I understand. He ended the call and looked at Kevin with complete defeat. Mr. Washington, I've been instructed to provide you with full cooperation, whatever you need. What I need, Kevin said quietly, is for this to continue exactly as it has been. No special treatment, no backtracking, no attempts to minimize what happened here. The live streaming father whispered to his audience. Something major is about to go down. This guy isn't just another passenger. He's somebody important. Kevin heard the whisper and turned to face the camera directly. I'm exactly who I appear to be. Nothing more, nothing less. The question is, why did that threaten so many people? 7:37 AIEM, the moment before, truth. The gate area fell silent. 200 passengers waited. Dozens of phones recorded. Social media buzzed with speculation and outrage. Kevin Washington stood at the center of it all, his composure absolute, his purpose clear. The humiliation was complete. The documentation was thorough. The witnesses were countless. In 3 minutes, everything would change. But first, he had one more call to make. 7:37 AYEM, the moment of truth. Kevin Washington pulled out his phone with deliberate precision. The gate area held its collective breath as he dialed a number from memory. This is Kevin, he said quietly. Yes, I'm still at gate 47. Execute the full protocol now. The voice on the other end was audible to nearby passengers. All departments, sir? L departments. And patch me through to the emergency board line. It's time. Thompson's face went ashen. Caroline stepped backward, bumping into a passenger. Officer Martinez looked between his radio and Kevin, uncertainty written across his features. 7:30 ADM EM, the portfolio revelation. Kevin ended the call and returned to his leather portfolio. This time he withdrew a different folder, thicker, more official, bearing corporate seals that caught the morning light. Since you've demanded documentation, he said, his voice carrying new authority, here's what you need to see. He opened the folder deliberately, allowing the crowd to witness what unfolded. The letterhead was unmistakable. Meridian Airlines Corporate Headquarters. Thompson's hands trembled as he read the first page. This can't be real. This has to be some kind of... Keep reading, Kevin instructed calmly. The live streaming father zoomed in on the documents, his audience now exceeding 15,000 viewers. Comments flooded the screen. What does it say? I can't see. Someone read it out loud. 7:39 a.m. The identity unveiled. Caroline grabbed the folder from Thompson's hands, her confidence returning. I don't care what fake documents. Her words died as she read the header. Her face drained of color completely. Evan Washington, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Airlines. She read aloud, her voice barely audible. The gate area erupted. Passengers gasped. Phones captured every moment of the revelation. The live streaming father's viewer count exploded past 20,000. That's impossible, Janet Rodriguez stammered. Meridian doesn't... This airline isn't... Check the tail number on the aircraft, Kevin suggested quietly. N847, MA. Meridian Airlines Flight 447, operated under partnership agreement with your carrier. Thompson's phone was already out, fingers flying across the screen. His corporate login revealed the truth in seconds. Oh God, it's true. 7:40 a.m. EM. The corporate hierarchy exposed. The revelation hit the crowd like a physical wave. Every passenger, every airline employee, every witness to the humiliation suddenly understood the magnitude of what they'd witnessed. Kevin Washington wasn't just a passenger. He was the owner. This was his aircraft. These were his employees. This was his airline. And they had just spent 43 minutes publicly humiliating their own CEO. Officer Martinez stepped forward, his authority evaporating. Sir, I had no idea. If I had known... You had no idea because you didn't need to know, Kevin replied. You made your judgments based on my appearance, not my identity. The live streaming father's narration became frantic. Holy shit, guys. Holy shit. This black man they've been harassing? He owns the airline. He's the CEO. Comments exploded across every social media platform. Lawsuit incoming. They are all fired. This is insane. Best plot twist ever. Manson's arrest took place in jail. 7:41 a.m. The strategic revelation. Kevin's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He answered on speaker, his voice carrying across the silent gate area. Kevin, it's Sarah from legal. We've been monitoring the situation. How do you want to proceed? Full documentation protocol, Kevin replied calmly. Every witness statement, every video, every piece of evidence. I want complete records of this incident. Already in progress. We have 17 different camera angles from passenger phones plus airport security footage. The live stream has been archived. Caroline's knees buckled. She gripped the counter for support. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. It's happening, Kevin confirmed. And it's being documented by thousands of witnesses. 742. AIM minim. The systemic exposure. Kevin turned to face the crowd directly. His voice carried the authority of absolute power combined with righteous purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed something important. You've seen how quickly bias and discrimination can escalate when people make assumptions based on appearance. The gate area was silent except for the clicking of phone cameras. This incident will be thoroughly investigated, not just the individual actions but the systemic failures that made this possible. Thompson fell into a chair, his career flashing before his eyes. Mr. Washington, please, there has to be a way to resolve this quietly. Quietly? Kevin's eyebrows rose. You mean like how you handled the last 43 minutes? Quietly? 7:43 a.m. EM. The evidence compilation. Kevin's phone buzzed with another call. He answered immediately. Kevin, It's Michael from Communications. The story's already trending on 6 platforms. Meridian CEO is #1 trending on Twitter. The footage is everywhere. Expected, Kevin replied. How many views? Combined across all platforms? Over 2 million and climbing. This is going global. Caroline began crying. Not tears of remorse, but tears of self-preservation. I didn't know. I was just doing my job. Your job, Kevin said quietly, was to treat passengers with dignity and respect. Your job was to check tickets, not judge worthiness. 7:44 a.m.e. The retained secret. Kevin looked at his watch, that expensive Patek Philippe that no one had bothered to notice. I have a board meeting in 6 hours. But first, I need to make one more call. He dialed a number, putting the phone on speaker again. This is Kevin. Initiate Code Red protocol. I want every department head in Conference Room A in exactly 4 hours. Code Red confirmed, came the response. All senior management will be present. Good. And patch me through to the Federal Aviation Administration liaison. We need to discuss some regulatory compliance issues. Thompson's face went gray. FAA? Mr. Washington, surely we can handle this internally. Can we? Kevin asked. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a systemic failure that requires federal oversight. 7:45 a.m. The power revelation. The crowd pressed closer as Kevin continued his methodical demolition of the airline's authority structure. You see, he explained to the captivated audience, this isn't just about one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior that's been documented and reported multiple times. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through files. Gate Agent Matthews has 17 formal complaints filed against her in the past 18 months, all involving passengers of color, all dismissed by management. Caroline's crying intensified. Those complaints were unfounded. I was just following procedures. Procedures that I never authorized, Kevin replied. Procedures that violate federal anti-discrimination laws. 7:46 a.m. Eastern. The ultimate reveal. Kevin's phone rang one final time. He answered with the calm of a man who had orchestrated every moment of this encounter. Kevin, it's the board secretary. Emergency session is confirmed. All members are standing by. Good. And Sarah? Yes, sir? Make sure the press office is ready. We'll be issuing a statement within the hour. The live streaming father's audience had exploded to over 50,000 viewers. His narration was breathless. This is the most insane thing I've ever witnessed. The CEO of the airline was discriminated against by his own employees, and now he's systematically destroying their careers in real time. 7:47 a.m. The final power play. Kevin closed his portfolio and adjusted his cufflinks one last time. Those platinum pieces with the KW monogram, Kevin Washington, finally made sense to everyone watching. Ladies and gentlemen, he addressed the crowd, you've participated in something historic today. You've documented institutional racism in real time. You've provided evidence that will create lasting change. He turned to Thompson, Caroline, and the assembled airline staff. You have 1 hour to prepare your statements. Legal will be in touch shortly. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The man they'd humiliated now held absolute authority over their futures. But Kevin Washington wasn't finished. As he walked toward the first-class boarding line, where he had always belonged, he made one final call. This is Kevin. Execute the full corporate review. I want every customer service interaction from the past 6 months analyzed. Every complaint, every incident, every moment where someone might have felt what I felt today. Understood, sir. Full systemic audit? Full systemic audit. And schedule a press conference for this afternoon. It's time the world knew what really happened at Gate 47. Please read this section and let me know if you'd like any adjustments before we continue to Part 5. 2:00 p.m. Meridian Airlines Corporate Headquarters, Conference Room A. The mahogany table stretched like a battlefield. 17 executives sat in leather chairs, their faces grave. Kevin Washington entered with the measured pace of absolute authority, his white shirt now replaced with a charcoal suit that commanded respect. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "6 hours ago I was publicly humiliated by our own employees. Today, we address the systemic failures that made that possible." The room was silent except for the hum of recording equipment. Everything would be documented. 2:02 p.m. The evidence presentation. Kevin activated the wall-mounted display. The first image was devastating. Caroline Matthews pointing at him, her face twisted with contempt, while dozens of passengers recorded the encounter. "This is how your employees treat your CEO," he said quietly. "But more importantly, this is how they treat passengers who look like me." The next slide showed statistics that made executives shift uncomfortably. 847 discrimination complaints filed in 18 months. 67% involving passengers of color. 23% increase in bias incidents, year over year. Only 12% of complaints resulted in disciplinary action. "These numbers represent system failure," Kevin continued, "not individual mistakes. System failure." CFO Margaret Chen raised her hand tentatively. "Kevin, the financial implications of this incident are massive," he finished. "Let me show you exactly how massive." 2:05 p.m. The financial devastation. Can you trace every event for... The next slide made the room gasp collectively. Projected financial impact. Federal discrimination lawsuit exposure, $847 million, 0 cents. Class action potential, $1,200 million, 0 cents. 18% decline. Annual revenue at risk, $340 million, 0 cents. Regulatory fines, probable sales bond, $67 million, 0 cents. This morning's incident has been viewed 4.2 million times across social media platforms, Kevin continued. The hashtag, #MeridianCO, is trending in 43 countries. Operations Chief David Morrison leaned forward. "Kevin, we can issue an apology, implement immediate training. This doesn't have to destroy the company." Kevin's response was ice cold. "David, how many times have we issued apologies? How many training programs have we implemented? How many promises have we made?" He clicked to the next slide, a timeline of previous incidents, each accompanied by corporate promises of change that never materialized. 2:08 p.m. The systemic rot exposed. "Let me read you some internal communications," Kevin said, pulling up email screenshots that made executives cringe. From gate supervisor Janet Rodriguez to regional manager Thompson. "Need to watch these upgrade passengers more carefully. You know the type." From Caroline Matthews to colleague. "Another suspicious first class. I swear they're getting bolder with these scams." From training director Lisa Park. "Discrimination training can be reduced to online modules. Most gate agents won't need the full program." The room was deadly quiet. Legal counsel Sarah Mitchell spoke first. "Kevin, these communications create massive liability. If they're discovered in litigation..." "They've already been discovered," Kevin replied, "by our own investigation. Every email, every text, every casual conversation that created this culture of bias." 2:12 p.m. The ultimatum. Kevin stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding absolute attention. "Here's what's going to happen. Today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today." The executives leaned forward, knowing their careers hung in the balance. First, Caroline Matthews, Janet Rodriguez, and David Thompson are terminated immediately. Full termination, no severance, permanent industry blacklisting. Kevin? HR Director Patricia Williams interjected. The legal ramifications of immediate termination without are minimal compared to keeping employees who create federal liability, Kevin cut her off. They're gone, non-negotiable. 2:15 p.m. The corporate overhaul. Kevin clicked to his reform presentation, each slide more comprehensive than the last. Second, every customer-facing employee, all 14,000 of them, will complete mandatory 40-hour bias elimination training within 60 days. Not online modules. In-person, intensive documented training. CFO Chin calculated quickly. Kevin, that's 560,000 training hours. The cost alone, $57 million, Kevin finished. Less than we'll pay in a single discrimination settlement. Third, we're implementing real-time bias detection technology. AI monitoring of all customer interactions, immediate intervention protocols, monthly bias incident reporting to the board. Operations Chief Morrison looked skeptical. The technology costs, the implementation timeline, are already approved. I authorized the expenditure this morning. Deployment begins Monday, 2:18 p.m. The accountability measures. Kevin's next slide showed a new organizational chart that restructured the entire company hierarchy. Fourth, we're creating a new Chief Diversity Officer position, reporting directly to me. Starting salary, $400,000, 0 cents annually, plus performance bonuses tied to bias reduction metrics. Fifth, executive compensation is now tied to discrimination metrics. Every senior manager's bonus will be reduced by 10% for each substantiated bias complaint in their department. The executives exchanged worried glances. Their personal wealth was now directly connected to treating customers with dignity. Sixth, monthly all-hands meetings where bias incidents are discussed openly. No more internal cover-ups, no more quiet dismissals, no more protecting employees who damage our reputation. 2:22 p.m. The legal framework. Legal counsel Sarah Mitchell pulled up federal regulations on her tablet. Kevin, we need to discuss compliance requirements. The FAA has specific guidelines about discrimination reporting. Already handled, Kevin replied. I spoke with FAA Administrator Patricia Johnson an hour ago. We're implementing voluntary enhanced reporting that exceeds federal requirements. What does that mean? She asked nervously. It means every bias incident gets reported to federal authorities within 24 hours. Every complaint, every investigation, every resolution. Complete transparency. The room absorbed the magnitude of this commitment. No other airline in the industry maintains such stringent self-reporting standards. 2:25 p.m. The industry precedent. Kevin activated the conference room's video connection. I've invited some observers to this meeting. 3 screens came alive, showing executives from competing airlines who had been watching the morning's incident unfold across social media. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the leadership teams from United, Delta, and American Airlines. They're here because what happened today affects the entire industry. United's CEO spoke first. Kevin, the video this morning was disturbing, but industry-wide changes based on one incident. Your incentive? Kevin's voice carried dangerous quiet. Sarah, show them the compilation. Legal counsel Mitchell activated a presentation showing discrimination incidents across all major carriers over the past 2 years. The evidence was overwhelming and systemic. This isn't one incident, Kevin continued. This is an industry crisis that I'm going to solve, starting with my own company. 2:28 p.m. The competitive advantage. Here's what you don't understand. Kevin addressed both his executives and the competing airline leaders. Dignity isn't just moral imperative, it's competitive advantage. He clicked to market research data that made everyone lean forward. 73% of travelers avoid airlines with discrimination controversies. $2,400,000,000, 0 cents in annual revenue lost to bias boycotts. 89% of passengers willing to pay premium for guaranteed dignity service. Millennials and Gen Z travelers most likely to change carriers over discrimination issues. While you're defending bias, I'm going to market dignity. While you're minimizing incidents, I'm going to eliminate them. While you're protecting problem employees, I'm going to attract the best talent in the industry. 2:30 p.m., the final ultimatum. Kevin stood and addressed his executive team with the authority of absolute power. You have 48 hours to decide if you want to be part of this transformation or obstacles to it. Anyone who questions these changes, delays implementation, or attempts to minimize this incident will be replaced immediately. The choice is simple: lead this change or be replaced by people who will. He gathered his materials and walked toward the door, then paused. Final thought. This morning, I was humiliated by my own employees in front of millions of witnesses. But I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because no passenger ever again should feel what I felt at Gate 47. The meeting is adjourned. Implementation begins immediately. Please read this section and let me know if you'd like any adjustments before we continue to Part 6. 3:30 p.m. The terminations. Caroline Matthews sat in HR Director Patricia Williams' office. Her airline badge and access cards spread across the desk like evidence of a life dismantled. Effective immediately, your employment with Meridian Airlines is terminated, Williams read from the official document. For cause: violation of company anti-discrimination policies, creation of hostile environment, and conduct detrimental to corporate reputation. Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. I have a mortgage, student loans. I can't just... Your actions this morning have been viewed 6.7 million times, Williams continued. The company cannot retain employees who create federal liability and public relations disasters. The termination letter was comprehensive and devastating. No severance pay, no references, no possibility of rehire within the airline industry. Janet Rodriguez received identical treatment 30 minutes later. David Thompson's termination meeting lasted longer due to his seniority, but the outcome was identical. 3 careers ended in a single afternoon. 4:15 p.m., the public announcement. Kevin Washington stood before a packed press conference at Denver International Airport. Reporters from CNN, NBC, ABC, and international outlets filled the room. Camera crews jostled for position. This morning, I experienced discrimination that no passenger should ever face, he began. But I'm not here to discuss my personal experience. I'm here to announce systemic changes that will prevent this from happening to anyone else. He outlined the comprehensive reform package with precision. Effective immediately, Meridian Airlines is implementing the most aggressive anti-discrimination program in aviation history. $57 million in bias elimination training, real-time AI monitoring of customer interactions, executive compensation tied to dignity metrics. A reporter from the Washington Post raised her hand. Mr. Washington, critics might say you're overreacting to a single incident. Ma'am, let me show you why this isn't overreaction. It's overdue. 4:20 p.m. The data revelation. Kevin activated the presentation screen behind him. The statistics were devastating. 847 discrimination complaints filed against Meridian in 18 months. 1,247 complaints filed against all major carriers combined. Average resolution time, 147 days. Percentage resulting in meaningful change, 7%. These numbers represent systematic failure across the entire industry, Kevin continued. Today, that changes. A CNN reporter leaned forward. What makes you think your reforms will succeed where others have failed? Because I experienced the problem firsthand. Because I documented it thoroughly. And because I have absolute authority to implement solutions immediately. 4:25 p.m. The technology solution. Kevin introduced Dr. Sarah Kim, MIT professor of artificial intelligence and the newly appointed Chief Technology Officer for bias detection. Dr. Kim has developed real-time monitoring systems that identify discriminatory language and behavior as it occurs, Kevin explained. Every customer interaction will be analyzed for bias indicators. Immediate intervention protocols activate when problems are detected. Dr. Kim demonstrated the system live. The AI analyzes vocal patterns, word choices, body language, captured by security cameras, and passenger feedback in real time. Supervisors receive alerts within seconds of potential bias incidents. A reporter from Reuters asked, "What about privacy concerns? Employee monitoring?" "Employees who treat customers with dignity have nothing to fear from monitoring," Kevin replied. "Employees who discriminate should fear immediate termination." 4:30 p.m. The industry impact. Kevin's phone buzzed with a call from United Airlines CEO. He answered on speaker. "Kevin, it's Michael. I've been watching your press conference. United wants to license your bias detection technology." "That's encouraging, Michael. What prompted this sudden interest in dignity?" "Our stock dropped 4% this afternoon. Investors are nervous about discrimination liability across the entire industry." Kevin smiled. "Market forces are powerful motivators for moral behavior." Delta's CEO called minutes later with a similar request. Then American Airlines. The entire industry was scrambling to avoid being left behind in the dignity revolution. 4:35 p.m. The employee response. Kevin's phone displayed real-time employee feedback from Meridian's internal communications system. From pilot Maria Santos. "Finally, leadership that matches our values." From gate agent Jerome Williams. "Proud to work for a company that takes discrimination seriously." From flight attendant Lisa Chen. "This is why I chose Meridian. Thank you for protecting all of us." Not every response was positive. Some employees questioned the overreaction and worried about excessive monitoring. Those responses were noted and flagged for additional training. 4:40 p.m. The passenger impact. The live streaming father from Gate 47, Marcus Johnson, joined the press conference via video link. His morning footage had sparked the global conversation. "Mr. Washington, I recorded your humiliation this morning because it was wrong, but I never expected it would lead to industry-wide change." "Marcus, your documentation was crucial. Without witnesses, discrimination often gets dismissed or minimized. You ensured that couldn't happen." Marcus continued. "My daughter asked me why those people were mean to you. I didn't have a good answer. Now I can tell her that sometimes bad things lead to important changes." 4:45 p.m. The financial vindication. CFO Margaret Chen provided real-time market analysis. Despite initial concerns about reform costs, Meridian's stock has risen 12% since the morning incident. Investors are responding positively to proactive discrimination prevention. "The market recognizes that dignity is profitable," Kevin observed. "Companies that treat customers fairly outperform companies that defend bias." Additionally, we've received inquiries from pension funds and ESG investors who want to increase their Meridian holdings specifically because of today's reforms. 4:50 p.m. The cultural transformation. Kevin addressed the final question from NBC. How do you ensure these changes become permanent, not just temporary responses to bad publicity? By making dignity profitable and discrimination expensive. By monitoring continuously rather than responding reactively. By promoting leaders who demonstrate bias awareness and removing leaders who perpetuate discrimination. Most importantly, by remembering that every passenger deserves the respect I was denied this morning. When that becomes automatic, when that becomes cultural instinct, then we've succeeded. 4:55 p.m. The personal victory. As the press conference ended, Kevin received a call from his assistant. "Kevin, Caroline Matthews just called. She wants to apologize personally." "Too late for apologies," Kevin replied. "Time for consequences." The intellectual victory was complete. Not through revenge or retaliation, but through systematic transformation that would prevent future humiliation for countless passengers. Justice served through institutional change rather than personal destruction. Please read this section and let me know if you'd like any adjustments before we continue to the final Part 7. 6 months later. The transformation. Meridian Airlines discrimination incidents dropped 89% within 6 months. The company that had humiliated its own CEO became the industry standard for passenger dignity. Dr. Sarah Kim's AI monitoring system detected and prevented 2,807 potential bias incidents before they escalated. Other airlines licensed the technology, creating industry-wide improvement. What started as one man's humiliation became aviation's dignity. Revolution. Kevin Washington's morning at Gate 47 sparked congressional hearings on airline discrimination. The Department of Transportation implemented new federal requirements based on Meridian's voluntary standards. An industry changed because one man refused to accept injustice quietly. The individual consequences. Caroline Matthews never worked in aviation again. Her termination for discrimination became public record, searchable by any potential employer. The career she built through bias ended in a single morning. She attempted to sue for wrongful termination. The lawsuit was dismissed when courts reviewed the documented evidence of her discriminatory behavior. The judge noted that employees who create federal liability cannot claim wrongful termination protection. Jeanette Rodriguez faced similar consequences. David Thompson lost his executive position and struggled to find comparable employment. Their careers ended not through vindictive revenge, but through natural consequences of documented discrimination. The corporate legacy. Meridian Airlines became the most diverse major carrier in America. Employee satisfaction scores reached industry highs. Customer loyalty increased 34%. Stock price rose 67% over 6 months. Kevin's reforms attracted top talent from competitors. Pilots, flight attendants, and executives sought positions at the airline that prioritized dignity over bias. Market forces rewarded moral leadership. Sam Meachimo's granddaughter, Lucille, expected moral leadership. The company's bias prevention program became a Harvard Business School case study. Kevin lectured at universities about transforming humiliation into systematic change. His story inspired leaders across industries to examine their own discriminatory practices. The social impact. Marcus Johnson's live stream footage became part of civil rights curriculum in schools nationwide. Students studied how modern technology documents discrimination and creates accountability. The hashtag Meridian CEO evolved into Dignity First, a movement encouraging passengers to document and report bias incidents across all service industries. Hotels, restaurants, and retail chains implemented similar monitoring systems. Kevin received the NAACP Corporate Leadership Award for advancing civil rights through business transformation. The ceremony honored not his individual success, but his systematic approach to eliminating institutional bias. The personal growth. Kevin Washington transformed from victim to catalyst. His quiet power during humiliation became legendary leadership during transformation. He proved that true strength lies not in avoiding discrimination, but in using it to create lasting change. The platinum cufflinks with KW monogram, overlooked during his humiliation, became symbols of hidden strength. Kevin wore them to every board meeting, every press conference, every moment when quiet dignity needed to speak louder than anger. His morning at Gate 47 taught America that assumptions about appearance create real consequences. His afternoon in the boardroom taught corporate America that bias is expensive and dignity is profitable. The continuing mission. Today, Kevin Washington continues leading Meridian Airlines with unwavering commitment to passenger dignity. Every policy, every training program, every executive decision reflects lessons learned during 43 minutes of public humiliation. The company's motto, adopted after the incident, reads simply, "Every passenger deserves respect." Those words appear on every boarding pass, every gate display, every employee handbook. They serve as permanent reminders that dignity cannot be assumed, it must be actively protected. Your voice matters. Have you witnessed discrimination that needs addressing? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters in creating change. Document injustice when you see it. Speak up when others stay silent. Demand dignity when systems fail. Subscribe for more stories of people turning humiliation into transformation. Together, we can build a world where respect isn't determined by appearance, where dignity isn't debatable, where justice comes through systematic change rather than individual revenge. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't defined by others' prejudices. Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination is proving that character, competence, and quiet strength always triumph over bias. The boardroom was falling apart. Richard Blackwood, billionaire CEO, was trying to translate for his mother, Eleanor. She's deaf since childhood, signing rapidly about the $50 million project. But Richard's basic sign language wasn't enough. He was missing half her words. Bradford Sterling, second-largest shareholder, waved dismissively at Eleanor. "Richard, maybe you should have brought a real interpreter. This is embarrassing." He turned to Eleanor like she was confused. "Don't worry, honey. The real adults will handle this." Eleanor's hands moved faster, desperate. Nobody was watching. The board had tuned out. Then a voice from the corner. "That's not fair." Every head turned. A 10-year-old black boy stood near the door. Worn jacket, Devin Anderson, the cleaning lady's son. He was about to step in. What that 10-year-old did next exposed a $2 million fraud and made a billionaire cry. 20 minutes earlier, Rosa Martinez had clocked in at Blackwood Enterprises at 6 in the morning. She was one of 12 custodial staff responsible for 42 floors of Manhattan real estate. Her supervisor asked her to stay late for a big board meeting on the executive level. Rosa said yes, she needed the overtime. Every dollar went into an envelope labeled Alicia's Future. Her deaf daughter's cochlear implant consultation in 3 months could cost $80,000. She'd brought Devin because the after-school program was closed. He was supposed to wait in the break room on the 38th floor, doing homework, staying invisible. But Devin got curious. He followed voices up the service stairwell and found himself outside the biggest boardroom he'd ever seen. Devin Anderson was small for 10 years old, barely 4'8", wearing a navy jacket 2 years old with frayed cuffs. His sneakers came from the PS 122 donation bin in Harlem, where he was a top 5th grade student despite missing school twice monthly to care for his sister when Rosa worked doubles. He'd learned early how to be invisible, how to read a room and understand power dynamics. But he'd also learned something that was about to make invisibility impossible. For 3 years, since Alicia was born deaf, Devin had been learning American Sign Language, from YouTube videos at the library, from books he read by flashlight under his blankets, from Miss Patricia, a retired UN interpreter who volunteered at the community center and recognized something special in the quiet boy asking questions nobody else thought to ask. Mostly, he'd learned from Alicia. 3 hours daily after school while Rosa worked her diner job, Devin was his sister's voice, ears, and bridge to a world not built for her. He'd learned to read not just signs, but facial expressions that changed meaning. Signing speed indicating emotion. regional variations making ASL as complex as any spoken language. Now, watching through the glass door, Devin saw something that tightened his stomach. A woman was signing. Fast, fluent, complex ASL with decades of precision. The man translating, her son, was getting it completely wrong. Inside, Eleanor Blackwood was explaining that profit shouldn't be measured only in dollars, that community investment was sustainable future investment. Richard was translating it as potential profit in the long run. She signed about human dignity and social responsibility. He reduced it to return on investment. Eleanor had built Blackwood Enterprises from $5,000 borrowed from a Queens credit union 50 years ago. 26 years old, deaf since childhood meningitis, determined to prove disability didn't mean inability. She'd started flipping one Brooklyn apartment, then 5, then buildings. By 40, she owned property across 3 boroughs. By 60, she managed a portfolio worth hundreds of millions. But her greatest asset had become her greatest liability. In fast-paced corporate real estate, where deals happened through rapid conversation and handshakes, Eleanor's deafness increasingly pushed her to the margins. She'd tried teaching Richard sign language when he was young, but he'd been resistant, embarrassed by his mother's difference. He'd learned enough for family settings, nowhere near enough for complex business concepts. Bradford Sterling had waited months for this moment. He'd joined the board 3 years ago after buying 12% stake, making him second-largest shareholder after Eleanor's trust. 45 years old, Yale-educated, inherited his first $10 million from his grandfather's textile fortune. He wore suits costing more than Rosa made in 3 months, drove a Bentley, and believed with absolute certainty that people like him were meant to run the world. He'd been systematically undermining Eleanor's authority for a year, questioning her decisions, suggesting time for fresh perspectives and younger leadership, making comments about how challenging it must be for Richard to carry the burden of a mother who couldn't participate fully, all sounding concerned but carrying contempt's sharp edge. Today's meeting would decide a $50 million affordable housing investment in the South Bronx. Eleanor's passion project, 18 months in planning, 300 units for low-income families, community center, free healthcare clinic, job training programs, modest ROI compared to luxury developments, but enormous social impact. Bradford had the votes to kill it. He'd worked other board members for weeks, arguing that philanthropic gestures were fine personally, but companies had fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value. He'd prepared spreadsheets showing 22% return from luxury condos on the same land versus Eleanor's 8% affordable housing return. The professional ASL interpreter who was supposed to attend had called in sick that morning. Car accident on the FDR, minor injuries but enough for the ER. Richard assured everyone he could translate. Bradford smiled and said, of course, whatever made Eleanor comfortable. He'd been counting on Richard's inadequate translation, counting on confusion and miscommunication, counting on using Eleanor's deafness as evidence she was no longer competent for major corporate decisions. What Bradford hadn't counted on was the 10-year-old watching through glass, the boy who'd just heard him mock and dismiss a deaf woman, the boy whose hands were clenching, remembering every time someone treated his sister Alicia the same way. Devin had spent 3 years finding his voice by giving one to his sister. He'd promised her he'd never let anyone make her invisible. That promise extended to every deaf person ever dismissed, ignored, or treated like they didn't matter. That promise was about to walk through the door. The moment Devin pushed open the door, 12 heads turned. A 10-year-old in a worn jacket standing where he had no business being. "Excuse me," Richard said, trying to sound kind while being dismissive. "You can't be in here. This is a private meeting." Devin's voice came out smaller than intended. "I'm sorry, sir, but that's not what your mother said." The room went silent. "What?" Richard stood. "Just now, when she was signing. You translated it wrong. She wasn't talking about profit potential. She was talking about social responsibility and sustainable community investment." Bradford Sterling laughed without humor. "Oh, this is rich. Business advice from children?" He turned to Richard with exaggerated sympathy. "Are we really hiring from elementary schools now?" "He's not hired. I don't even know who he is." "I'm Devin Anderson, sir. My mother is Rosa Martinez. She works in custodial. I was waiting downstairs and heard the meeting and saw that Mrs. Blackwood wasn't being understood. That's not right." Eleanor leaned forward. Her hands moved quickly, signing at Devon. A question. A test. Without thinking, Devon's hands responded in fluent ASL. I can understand you. I can help. Eleanor's eyes widened. She signed faster, more complex. Devon translated aloud. She's asking how I learned sign language. She wants to know if I'm a professional interpreter. This is ridiculous, Bradford said, standing. Richard, get this kid out before I call security. But Eleanor was signing urgently to Richard. He watched his mother's hands, catching maybe one word in 5, frustration growing. Mom, I can't. Slow down. She's saying she wants to let me try, Devon said quietly. If there's someone here who can actually understand her, she'd like to have a real voice for once. Bradford's laugh was sharp and mean. Okay, I'll bite. This should be entertaining. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Tell you what, kid. If you can really understand her, and I mean really, not just making up what sounds good, prove it right now. But here's the deal. His smile was all teeth. If you're wasting our time, your mama loses her job. Right here, right now. If you're right, though, I'll personally donate $100,000 to any charity Eleanor wants. Bradford, that's completely inappropriate, Dr. Catherine Wilson started. If he's right, Bradford continued, talking over her, if he miraculously can translate better than her own son, we'll all be amazed. How's that for stakes? Rosa appeared in the doorway, face pale, hands clutched white-knuckle tight. Devon, mijo, come away. But Devon was looking at Eleanor. And Eleanor was looking back with something he recognized, the same exhausted desperation Alicia had when kids mocked her hearing aids. Someone who'd spent their whole life trying to be heard. Eleanor signed one sentence, slow and deliberate. Devon translated without hesitation. She says, let's begin. The entire room held its breath. 3 years ago, Devon's life changed on a Tuesday in October. 7 years old, sitting in Harlem Hospital's waiting room, legs swinging because they didn't reach the floor. His mother had been in delivery for 6 hours. When the nurse finally came, she was smiling. You have a baby sister, come meet her. Alicia Rosa Anderson weighed 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Dark hair like their mother. A grip surprisingly strong. Devon had held her with terrified gentleness, something infinitely precious and breakable. She'd opened her eyes and looked at him. He'd fallen completely in love. Their father had been gone 2 years. He'd left when Devon was 5, wanting a different life, an easier life. One without grinding Brooklyn poverty and overnight shifts and maxed-out credit cards. When Alicia was 4 months old, Rosa noticed something wrong. The baby didn't startle at loud noises, didn't turn toward voices. The audiologist delivered the diagnosis with clinical gentleness, profound bilateral sensorineural hearing loss, born deaf, nothing to fix, only manage. Rosa cried for 3 days, not because she didn't love her daughter, but because she understood what the world would do to a deaf child when they could barely afford rent. She researched cochlear implants, therapies, special education. Everything cost money they didn't have. Devon, 7 years old, understood enough to be scared. His sister was different. The world wasn't kind to different. He'd started researching on library computers after school. Typed how to talk to deaf baby into Google and fell down a rabbit hole defining the next 3 years. American Sign Language, deaf culture, videos of deaf children communicating with families, deaf adults advocating for their community. He found a channel run by a deaf woman named Sarah teaching basic ASL to hearing parents. Devon watched every video, practiced in the bathroom mirror, small hands stumbling through the alphabet, then words, then sentences. When Alicia was 8 months old, Devon signed milk to her. She stared at his hands. 3 days later, she signed it back. Rosa found them in the kitchen, Devon barely tall enough to reach the counter, signing to his baby sister in her high chair. Both completely focused on each other's hands. Rosa started crying again, this time from relief. Devon spent every free moment studying. He found Miss Patricia at the community center when he was 8. She was a retired UN interpreter, 60-something, 20 years of professional experience. She'd seen him practicing signs in the corner and asked if he had a deaf family member. When he told her about Alicia, she offered weekly tutoring, free, because every deaf child deserved family members who could communicate fluently. Miss Patricia was rigorous and demanding, She taught not just signs, but grammar structure, regional dialects, facial expressions, cultural context that made ASL a complete language, not just hand gestures. She made him practice until his hands ached, corrected improper classifiers, pushed him to think in ASL, not translate English into signs. By 9, Devin was interpreting Alicia's doctor appointments, parent-teacher conferences at her deaf preschool, phone calls with family in Mexico. Rosa wanted to update. He'd become his sister's voice, and found a purpose bigger than himself. Miss Patricia told him once, "The best interpreters don't just translate words, Devin. They translate intent, emotion, dignity. They give people back their agency." Devin carried that like a promise. Every deaf person deserved to be heard. Every voice mattered. If the world wasn't listening, someone needed to step in and make them listen. Standing in that boardroom, watching Eleanor's desperate hands and Bradford's contemptuous face, Devin heard Miss Patricia's voice again. Someone needs to step in. He'd spent 3 years preparing for this moment without knowing it was coming. Let me add more emotional depth. 3 years ago, Devin's life changed on a Tuesday in October. 7 years old, sitting in Harlem Hospital's waiting room, legs swinging because they didn't reach the floor. His mother had been in delivery for 6 hours. When the nurse finally came, she was smiling. "You have a baby sister. Come meet her." Alicia Rosa Anderson weighed 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Dark hair like their mother, a grip surprisingly strong. Devin had held her with terrified gentleness, something infinitely precious and breakable. She'd opened her eyes and looked at him. He'd fallen completely in love. Their father had been gone 2 years. He'd left when Devin was 5, wanting a different life, an easier life. One without grinding Brooklyn poverty and overnight shifts and maxed-out credit cards for groceries. When Alicia was 4 months old, Rosa noticed something wrong. The baby didn't startle at loud noises, didn't turn toward voices. The audiologist delivered the diagnosis with clinical gentleness: profound bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. Born deaf, nothing to fix, only manage. Rosa cried for 3 days, not because she didn't love her daughter, but because she understood what the world would do to a deaf child when they could barely afford rent. She researched cochlear implants, therapies, special education. Everything cost money they didn't have. Devin, 7 years old, understood enough to be scared. His sister was different. The world wasn't kind to different. He'd started researching on library computers after school, typed "how to talk to deaf baby" into Google and fell down a rabbit hole defining the next 3 years. American Sign Language, deaf culture, videos of deaf children communicating with families, deaf adults advocating for their community. He found a channel run by a deaf woman named Sarah teaching basic ASL to hearing parents. Devin watched every video, practiced in the bathroom mirror, small hands stumbling through the alphabet, then words, then sentences. When Alicia was 8 months old, Devin signed milk to her. She stared at his hands. 3 days later, she signed it back. Rosa found them in the kitchen, Devin, barely tall enough to reach the counter, signing to his baby sister in her high chair, both completely focused on each other's hands. Rosa started crying again, this time from relief. The learning curve was steep. Devin spent every free moment studying. He found Miss Patricia at the community center when he was 8. She was a retired UN interpreter, 60-something, 20 years at the UN. She'd seen him practicing signs in the corner and asked if he had a deaf family member. When he told her about Alicia, she offered weekly tutoring. Free. Because every deaf child deserved family members who could communicate fluently. Miss Patricia was rigorous and demanding. She taught not just signs, but grammar structure, regional dialects, facial expressions, cultural context, making ASL a complete language, not just hand gestures. She made him practice until his hands ached, corrected improper classifiers, pushed him to think in ASL, not translate English into signs. By 9, Devin was interpreting Alicia's doctor appointments, parent-teacher conferences at her deaf preschool, phone calls with family in Mexico. Rosa wanted to update about the kids. He'd become his sister's voice and found a purpose bigger than himself. Miss Patricia told him once, "The best interpreters don't just translate words, Devin. They translate intent, emotion, dignity. They give people back their agency." Devin carried that like a promise. Every deaf person deserved to be heard. Every voice mattered. If the world wasn't listening, Someone needed to step in and make them listen. The hardest days were when Alicia came home from preschool crying because kids called her weird for her hand movements, or when she asked Devin through signs why she was different, why she couldn't hear music like other kids, why her father left. Those were the nights Devin practiced harder, studied longer, because he'd made a promise to his baby sister. She would never be invisible. She would always have a voice, even if that voice had to be his. Standing in that boardroom, watching Eleanor's desperate hands and Bradford's contemptuous face, Devin heard Miss Patricia's voice again. Someone needs to step in. He'd spent 3 years preparing for this moment without knowing it was coming. Eleanor Blackwood's hands moved through the air with precision born of 68 years of use. She signed a complete thought, 2 sentences carrying nuance and complexity, the kind requiring understanding of context and intention. Richard watched his mother's hands, face creasing with concentration and frustration. She says something about money isn't everything, and the future, or investing. It wasn't close. Bradford smirked. Brilliant translation, Richard. Very specific. I'm sure we can build a $50 million strategy around money isn't everything. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Wilson leaned forward, watching Devin with sharp interest. Devin took a breath and stepped fully into the room. Mrs. Blackwood said, profit is not measured only in dollars and cents. Investing in community infrastructure is investing in sustainable futures that benefit everyone, including our company's long-term reputation and stability. The room went silent. Eleanor's head snapped toward Devin. She signed quickly, a question. She's asking if I really understood all that or if I guessed, Devin translated. He signed directly to Eleanor. I understood completely. I can help you. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She signed elaborately. She's thanking me. She says it's been a long time since someone understood her properly in a business setting. Devin paused. She wants to continue the presentation. She has important information about the South Bronx project that hasn't been communicated accurately. Bradford's smirk faded slightly. Okay, that was cute. But lucky guesses won't cut it here, kid. This is business, not Dr. Seuss. Then test me, Devin said quietly. Oh, I will. Oh. Bradford leaned forward. Richard, ask your mother about the specific financial breakdown, budget allocation, timeline, ROI projections. Let's see if our little interpreter can handle actual business terminology. Richard signed to his mother, but his signs were clumsy and imprecise. Eleanor watched with visible frustration, then began signing rapidly, her hands moving through complex spatial references and numerical classifiers representing buildings, budgets, and demographics. Richard was lost within seconds. Mom, slower, I don't... Devin's voice cut in, clear and organized. Mrs. Blackwood is explaining the project architecture. 3 buildings on a 2-acre site in the South Bronx. Building A, 120 units focused on single-parent families. Building B, 100 units for elderly residents with ground-floor accessible facilities. Building C, 80 units for people with disabilities, fully ADA compliant. Total 300 units. He paused, his hands unconsciously mirroring Eleanor's signs. Budget breakdown, $50 million total. $34 million construction, $8 million for community facilities including health clinic, job training center, children's education programs, $6 million for ongoing operations and maintenance for the first 3 years, $2 million contingency fund. Dr. Wilson was typing rapidly on her tablet. She looked up, eyes wide. That's exactly what's in Eleanor's written proposal, word for word, down to specific budget categories. Board members exchanged glances. Gregory Taylor, on the board 15 years, spoke up. How does a 10-year-old know technical ASL well enough to translate financial terminology? Bradford jumped in. He doesn't. He obviously memorized Eleanor's proposal somehow. This is staged. I've never seen Mrs. Blackwood's proposal, Devin said. I'm just translating what she's signing right now. Prove it. Bradford's voice had an edge. Richard, I'm going to ask Eleanor something she can't have prepared for. Something not in any written proposal. Ask her about property tax implications in year 3, accounting for the city's projected tax rate increases and potential market fluctuations. A trap. Complex enough that even if Devin had seen Eleanor's proposal, it wouldn't cover this specific hypothetical. Richard would have to sign it, and odds were he'd mangle the question so badly Eleanor's answer wouldn't make sense. Richard signed to his mother, struggling with terminology. Devin could see him leaving out words, simplifying concepts because he didn't know proper classifiers, but Eleanor understood enough. She paused, thinking, hands still. Then she began signing a detailed response, face showing concentration of someone doing complex mental calculations. Devin watched carefully, processing not just signs but grammatical structure and spatial reasoning. Mrs. Blackwood says property taxes will increase approximately 3.2% annually based on the city's historical patterns. However, the Affordable Housing Project qualifies for New York State tax credits under the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which will offset the increases. When you factor in federal tax benefits and the city's inclusionary zoning bonuses, the net impact is actually savings of approximately $1.8 million over the first 5-year period. Dead silence. Dr. Wilson checked her tablet, pulling up what looked like a tax analysis spreadsheet. Her face paled. He's absolutely correct. Those are exact numbers from the financial consultant's tax impact report. Eleanor, did you memorize all this? Eleanor signed with a small smile. Devin translated. She says she built an $800 million company by understanding numbers. Just because she can't hear doesn't mean she can't calculate. Bradford's face was turning red. This doesn't prove anything. But the doubt in his voice was clear. For the first time all meeting, he looked uncertain. Richard was staring at Devin like he'd never seen him before. How are you doing this? Devin met his eyes. I'm just listening, sir. Really listening. Bradford Sterling stood, his 6'2" frame designed to intimidate. He walked around the table until he was standing feet from Devin. The power move was obvious. The 10-year-old had to tilt his head back to meet his eyes. Okay, smart kid, let's see if you can handle this. Bradford's voice shifted from dismissive to aggressive. I'm going to create a scenario, a complex financial crisis, and I want you to interpret it for Eleanor and bring back her response. If you get even one detail wrong, you're done, and your mother's done. Understood? Rosa's voice came from the doorway, strained and frightened. Bradford, please. He's just a child. Then he shouldn't be playing in adult spaces. Bradford didn't even look at her. Richard, ask your mother the following. If interest rates spike to 8% next quarter, and construction costs increase 15% due to supply chain disruptions, what's her contingency plan for keeping the project financially viable? And I want specifics, not vague platitudes about believing in the community. Designed to be impossible. Multiple variables, hypothetical scenarios requiring deep knowledge of construction finance, interest mechanisms, risk management, the kind of question making even experienced executives pause. Richard attempted to sign the question, but his vocabulary was so limited he was essentially asking, what if money problems happen? Eleanor looked frustrated, signed something back asking for clarification. Bradford smiled. See? Even with her son translating, she can't understand a complex business question. That's because the question wasn't translated properly, Devin said. Devin. He turned to Eleanor and began signing. His hands moved with confidence born of 3 years learning that precision mattered. He fingerspelled interest rate and supply chain because those were technical terms, then used proper classifiers for increase and percentage change. He built the hypothetical scenario spatially, using signing space to represent different financial variables. Eleanor's eyes lit with understanding. She nodded sharply, then began signing a response. Not a simple answer. A complete financial strategy. Devin watched, processing, then turned to translate. Mrs. Blackwood says Mr. Sterling's question is based on a faulty premise. The company has already locked interest rates at 4.2% for 3 years through a forward rate agreement with Chase Bank. As for construction materials, she personally negotiated fixed-price contracts with 3 primary suppliers back in September, specifically to hedge against supply chain volatility that anyone paying attention to the market could see coming. Bradford's confident expression cracked slightly. Eleanor kept signing. Devin continued translating, voice gaining strength. She's now asking a question back. Did Mr. Sterling actually read the full 81-page impact study she commissioned from Columbia University's Urban Planning Department? Or did he only read the 3-page executive summary? Dr. Wilson let out a surprised laugh. Another board member coughed to cover what might have been a chuckle. Bradford's face flushed. I reviewed the relevant sections. Eleanor signed again, sharply. Mrs. Blackwood says the relevant sections are the 78 pages of detailed analysis Mr. Sterling apparently skipped, Devon translated. Those pages explain exactly how she's planned for multiple risk scenarios, including the ones he just mentioned. She says if he'd read them, he wouldn't be asking questions already answered. The power dynamic was shifting. Board members who'd been checking phones were now paying full attention. Dr. Wilson was openly smiling. Richard looked like he was watching his understanding of his mother completely transform. Bradford's voice went cold. This is ridiculous. A 10-year-old street kid from Harlem suddenly speaks fluent ASL and understands corporate finance? Eleanor, are you even sure he's translating accurately? He could be making up whatever sounds intelligent. The comment was calculated cruelty, suggesting Eleanor couldn't even trust her own interpreter, that her deafness made her inherently vulnerable to manipulation. Eleanor's face went hard. She signed something sharp and quick. Devon's voice matched her intensity. Mrs. Blackwood says that's exactly what someone says when they're losing an argument. Attack the interpreter because you can't attack the message. I'm asking legitimate questions about credibility, Bradford said. For all we know, you two rehearsed this. You're probably her charity case, some feel-good diversity initiative. Devon felt anger flash hot in his chest, but kept his voice level. If you don't trust my translation, test it. Write a sentence, any sentence. Give it to Mrs. Blackwood to read. She'll sign it back. I'll translate. That way you'll know whether I'm honest. Bradford's eyes gleamed. Fine. He pulled out a notepad and wrote for a full minute, clearly crafting something as complex and jargon-heavy as possible. When he finished, he handed it to Eleanor with exaggerated courtesy. Please read this and sign your response. Eleanor read. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Then she began signing, face showing both comprehension and contempt. Devon watched carefully. Bradford had written, "The fiduciary responsibility of this board supersedes emotional decision-making, and we must prioritize quantifiable shareholder value over nebulous philanthropic endeavors that cannot demonstrate clear return on investment within acceptable timeframes. Corporate speak for, we care about money, not people." Eleanor understood it perfectly. Devon translated. Mrs. Blackwood understands what you wrote. She says you're using big words to hide a small idea. She agrees the board has fiduciary responsibility, but she asks, how do you define value? If shareholder value means only this quarter's stock price, then yes, this project isn't optimal. But if value includes brand reputation, employee morale, community goodwill, and long-term market stability, then this project is invaluable. And she wants to know, when Mr. Sterling talks about acceptable timeframes, is he talking about the company's future, or just the time until his next bonus vests? The room erupted. Dr. Wilson clapped. Two other board members grinned. Gregory Taylor said loudly, Eleanor, that's the best response to Bradford's nonsense I've heard in 3 years. Bradford's face went purple. This is a setup! Dr. Catherine Wilson stood from her chair. 58 years old, former social worker who'd made a fortune in nonprofit consulting before joining corporate boards. She'd been the only voice consistently questioning Bradford's aggressive tactics. Now she looked at him with open disgust. Bradford, that's enough. This child has demonstrated more professionalism and competence than you've shown this entire meeting. She turned to the rest of the board. For 3 years, I've watched us sideline Eleanor because communication was difficult. Because it was easier to let Richard give simplified summaries than actually ensure we understood her complete vision. We failed her. We failed our fiduciary duty to hear from our largest shareholder. And a 10-year-old just showed us exactly how badly. Richard stood, walked to his mother, and knelt beside her chair. He signed something. Slowly, imperfectly, but with clear emotion. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have learned better. I should have tried harder. Eleanor's hands moved in response. Devon translated without being asked. She says it's not your fault. She knows you tried, but trying isn't enough. This is the first time she's felt truly heard in years. Margaret Foster, another board member, spoke up. Eleanor, I need to apologize. I voted against several of your initiatives, not because I disagreed with the vision, but because I genuinely didn't understand what you were proposing. I thought the communication barrier meant— I'm ashamed to say I thought it meant the ideas weren't fully formed. I was wrong. Bradford was looking around the room, watching his support crumble. You're all being manipulated by emotion. This is business. This is business, Gregory Taylor interrupted. Eleanor built this company on instinct, intelligence, and understanding people. Those skills don't require hearing, they require attention. Something you've never given her. Eleanor began signing again. Not to Devon, but to the entire room. She stood, moved to the head of the table where the presentation screen was, and began a full presentation in ASL. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd been waiting years to finally be understood. Devon stood beside her, translating in real time like a professional interpreter. She's saying, this project is not charity, it's justice, recognizing that stable housing creates stable communities, which create stable economies. The 300 families who will live in these buildings will have children who go to better schools. They'll have healthcare access, preventing emergency room visits. They'll have job training, creating taxpayers instead of people dependent on social services. The return on investment isn't measured in one quarterly report. It's measured in generations. Eleanor's signing became more animated, more emotional. Devon matched her energy. She grew up poor in Queens. She knows what it's like to be invisible, to have people talk about you instead of to you. When she lost her hearing at age 8, the world stopped listening completely. People assumed deaf meant stupid. They made decisions for her instead of with her. She built this company by refusing to be invisible. This housing project is about refusing to let 300 families be invisible. Eleanor signed her final point. Devon delivered it with quiet power. She says, profit without purpose is just greed, and she didn't build this company on greed. The room erupted in applause. Dr. Catherine Wilson stood from her chair. She was 58. A former social worker who'd made a fortune in nonprofit consulting. She'd been the only voice consistently questioning Bradford's tactics. Now she looked at him with open disgust. Bradford, that's enough. This child has demonstrated more professionalism and competence than you've shown this entire meeting. She turned to the board. For 3 years, I've watched us sideline Eleanor because communication was difficult, because it was easier to let Richard give simplified summaries than actually ensure we understood her complete vision. We failed her, and a 10-year-old just showed us exactly how badly. Richard stood, walked to his mother, and knelt beside her chair. He signed something, slowly, imperfectly, but with clear emotion. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have learned better. Eleanor's hands moved in response. Devon translated without being asked. She says it's not your fault. She knows you tried. But this is the first time she's felt truly heard in years. Margaret Foster spoke up. Eleanor, I need to apologize. I voted against several of your initiatives, not because I disagreed, but because I genuinely didn't understand what you were proposing. I thought the communication barrier meant the ideas weren't fully formed. I was wrong. Bradford was looking around, watching his support crumble. You're all being manipulated by emotion. This is business, Gregory Taylor interrupted. Eleanor built this company on instinct, intelligence, and understanding people. Those skills don't require hearing. They require attention, something you've never given her. Eleanor began signing again, not to Devon, but to the entire room. She stood, moved to the head of the table, and began a full presentation in ASL. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd been waiting years to finally be understood. Devon stood beside her, translating in real time like a professional interpreter. She's saying, this project is not charity, it's justice. Recognizing that stable housing creates stable communities, which create stable economies. The 300 families who'll live in these buildings will have children who go to better schools, healthcare access preventing emergency room visits, job training creating taxpayers instead of people dependent on social services. The return on investment isn't measured in one quarterly report, it's measured in generations. Eleanor's signing became more animated, emotional. Devon matched her energy. She grew up poor in Queens. She knows what it's like to be invisible, to have people talk about you instead of to you. When she lost her hearing at 8, the world stopped listening. People assumed deaf meant stupid. They made decisions for her instead of with her. She built this company by refusing to be invisible. This housing project is about refusing to let 300 families be invisible. Eleanor signed her final point. Devin delivered it with quiet power. She says, profit without purpose is just greed, and she didn't build this company on greed. The room erupted in applause. Bradford Sterling's hands were shaking. The room that had been his to control 15 minutes ago had completely turned, but he had one card left, and he was desperate enough to play it. Stop! His voice cut through the applause. This is emotional manipulation. You're all so busy crying about heartwarming stories that you're forgetting basic corporate governance. He pointed at Eleanor. She's 76 years old, she's deaf, and clearly declining mentally. I motion for an immediate competency evaluation. This vote should be postponed until we can verify she's actually capable of making informed decisions about $50 million. The room went ice cold. It was a nuclear option, crossing every line of decency. Dr. Wilson's voice was furious. Bradford, you are out of... Eleanor's hand rose, stopping her. The older woman's face was calm, but her eyes were steel. She began signing, slowly, deliberately, with controlled rage more powerful than any shout. Devin translated, his voice carrying every ounce of her anger. She says, Mr. Sterling, I have been deaf for 68 years. Not one single day have I allowed it to define my intelligence. I built this company from 5,000 borrowed dollars into an $800 million empire. I can read a financial statement better than you. I understand people better than you. I understand markets better than you. And I understand something you clearly don't, that competence and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Eleanor's hands moved faster now, more intense. For the past 6 months, I've noticed discrepancies in our Q2 and Q3 financial reports. Small things. Vendor payments that didn't quite match invoices, expense reports with unusual patterns. So I did what I've always done when something doesn't add up. I hired a private auditor, someone with no connection to this board, someone who could look at our books with fresh eyes. Bradford's face had gone from red to white. The audit report is in the drawer of this conference table. Right side, third drawer down. Richard, would you get it, please? Richard opened the drawer, pulled out a thick manila envelope. Dr. Wilson took it, opened it, and began reading. Her expression shifted from curious to shocked to furious in 30 seconds. Bradford, Dr. Wilson's voice was shaking. Did you really expense your yacht club membership as client entertainment? Did you create fake vendor invoices for consulting services that never happened? Did you embezzle $2.3 million from this company over 18 months? The room exploded. Board members were talking over each other, demanding to see the report. Bradford was backing toward the door, his confident facade shattered. Eleanor kept signing. Devin kept translating, voice growing stronger. Mrs. Blackwood says, you thought because I'm deaf I wasn't paying attention. You thought because I couldn't participate easily in meetings, I didn't know what was happening. You were wrong. I don't need ears to see patterns in numbers. I don't need a voice to expose theft, and I don't need you to speak for me. Devin paused as Eleanor's hands formed the final signs. Because I have a voice, right here. Bradford made one last desperate attempt. He looked at Devin with pure venom. You think you've won something, boy? You're just a poor black kid who'll end up exactly like your mama, cleaning toilets for people like me. You don't belong in places like this. The room gasped. The mask had come completely off. Devin stood straighter. He looked Bradford directly in the eyes and signed as he spoke, hands and voice perfectly synchronized. You're right that I don't belong, not in a place where people like you make decisions. But Mrs. Blackwood belongs. My sister belongs. Every person you've ever dismissed or underestimated belongs, and we're not going anywhere. He took a breath. Sometimes the weakest piece makes the winning move. You never saw me coming, Mr. Sterling. That's your mistake, not mine. Eleanor stood, walked to Devin, and pulled him into a hug. The entire board stood and applauded, everyone except Bradford, who was already heading for the door. Security will escort you out, Dr. Wilson said coldly. Don't bother coming back. After Bradford left, escorted by 2 security guards, the energy in the room shifted. The adrenaline drained, leaving something quieter and more profound. Dr. Wilson made a formal motion. I move to remove Bradford Sterling from this board effective immediately. pending full investigation into the financial irregularities detailed in Eleanor's audit report. All in favor? Every hand went up. Unanimous. "I'll be contacting our attorneys within the hour," Dr. Wilson said. "And the district attorney's office. This is criminal fraud." Eleanor sat back down, suddenly looking exhausted. She signed something to Devin, and he pulled up a chair beside her. They had a conversation in ASL, hands moving in a private language nobody else could fully follow, but the emotion was clear: gratitude, connection, understanding. Finally, Devin turned to translate. "Mrs. Blackwood is asking me how old I am, how long I've been learning ASL. She wants to know about my sister." For the next 5 minutes, Devin told them about Alicia, about learning from YouTube videos and library books, about Miss Patricia at the community center who'd seen potential in a scared 8-year-old boy, about hours practicing until his hands ached, about becoming his sister's voice because the world wasn't built for deaf children. "She taught me something," Devin said quietly. "My sister. She signs to me, don't pity me, just listen to me. That's all she wants. That's all any deaf person wants. Not pity, not charity, just respect, just being heard." Eleanor signed again, tears running down her face. Devin translated. "Mrs. Blackwood says Miss Patricia would be proud of me and that my sister is lucky to have me." Rosa was invited into the boardroom. She'd been standing outside, terrified and proud and overwhelmed. Eleanor signed to her directly, and Devin translated. "She says you raised an extraordinary son, that his compassion and intelligence didn't come from nowhere, they came from you. She says you should be very proud." Rosa started crying, pulling Devin into a hug that lifted him off the ground. "Mijo, mi amor, you were so brave." Richard knelt beside his mother again. This time, he didn't try to sign. He just spoke, knowing Devin would translate. "Mom, I failed you. For years, I told myself I knew enough sign language to get by. But I was lazy. I was embarrassed, and I let my embarrassment become your isolation. I'm so sorry." Eleanor's response was gentle. Devin translated. She says, "You tried. That matters. But trying isn't enough anymore. Starting tomorrow, you're hiring a full-time ASL interpreter for this company, and you're going to take professional lessons, real lessons, no more excuses." "I promise," Richard said. "Every day, I swear." Dr. Wilson addressed the room. "This board has failed Eleanor for years. We let communication barriers become an excuse for exclusion. We assumed difficulty meant inability. We were lazy, we were ableist, and we were wrong." She looked at each board member. "From this day forward, every single meeting will have professional ASL interpretation. We'll implement it company-wide, and we'll actively recruit deaf and hard-of-hearing employees at every level." Margaret Foster added, "And we'll fund a scholarship program for kids who want to become interpreters, kids like Devin who understand that language is about more than words, it's about dignity." Eleanor signed something with a small smile. Devin translated. "She says it only took 10 years and a child to teach you all what she's been trying to say from the beginning." The room laughed, the sound carrying both shame and hope. Gregory Taylor spoke up. "All in favor of approving Eleanor's South Bronx affordable housing project?" Every hand rose, unanimous again. "Approved," Dr. Wilson said. $50 million. Let's build something that matters." Eleanor looked at Devin and signed one more thing. He didn't translate out loud. Just signed back, a private conversation between two people who understood what it meant to fight to be heard. But the meaning was written on both their faces. Thank you for listening. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for stepping in. The story didn't end in that boardroom. In many ways, it was just beginning. Within 24 hours, security footage from the meeting had leaked, with Eleanor's permission. The video went viral, 10 million views in 48 hours. 20 million by week's end. The image of a 10-year-old black boy standing up to executives, translating for a deaf billionaire, exposing fraud and defending dignity, resonated across every demographic. The New York Times ran it front page. 10-year-old interpreter exposes boardroom fraud, gives voice to deaf billionaire. CNN picked it up. Good Morning America invited Devin, Rosa, Alicia, and Eleanor for an interview. Devin translated the entire segment, with Alicia on his lap, occasionally signing questions that made the hosts tear up. The hashtag Justice for Devin trended within hours, but Devin himself redirected it. In every interview, every post, he changed the narrative. It wasn't about him. It was about deaf voices matter, about every voice matters, about building a world where communication barriers didn't become excuses for exclusion. Bradford Sterling's fall was swift and complete. The FBI confirmed everything in Eleanor's audit. $2.3 million in fraudulent expenses, fake invoices, embezzled funds through shell companies. He was arrested within a week, indicted on 15 counts. His wife filed for divorce. His yacht club membership was revoked. His face became shorthand for corporate greed and casual racism. Other companies where he held board positions cut ties immediately. His Manhattan reputation was destroyed. The man who'd believed privilege and pedigree made him untouchable learned that some things couldn't be bought or inherited. He would plead guilty to avoid trial, accept a 3-year sentence, and be ordered to pay back every dollar plus damages. But the real punishment was simpler. Everyone knew what he'd done. Everyone knew a 10-year-old had exposed him. For Devin and his family, changes came more gently, but no less profound. Eleanor wrote a check the day after the meeting. $50,000, full scholarship to Manhattan's most prestigious interpreter training program, reserved for Devin when old enough. Until then, money for private ASL tutoring, education expenses, anything needed. More immediately, she wrote another check. $25,000 for Alicia's cochlear implant consultation and initial procedures. Rosa cried for an hour when Eleanor handed it to her, signing through Devin. "Your daughter deserves every opportunity. Let me help." Richard offered Rosa a new position, Community Outreach Coordinator for Blackwood Enterprises. Salary, $65,000 yearly, full benefits, 9-to-5 schedule, no more overnight shifts. Her job would be building bridges between the company and communities they served, ensuring voices like hers, voices usually unheard in corporate spaces, had a seat at the table. Rosa quit her restaurant job that night. For the first time in 7 years, she'd have a schedule letting her see her children before bedtime. Within 3 months, the family moved from their cramped Brooklyn 1-bedroom to a spacious 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood. Alicia started at a new school with a full-time ASL interpreter and deaf education specialists. Devin stayed at PS 122 because he loved his teachers, but he started a program there, teaching free ASL classes to any student who wanted to learn. 200 kids signed up the first semester. Devin became the youngest certified community interpreter in New York State, granted a special waiver due to exceptional skills and clear need for his services. He volunteered 10 hours weekly at nonprofits, interpreting for deaf families who couldn't afford professional services. He was interviewed by Gallaudet University's Youth Outreach Program, asked to speak at a National Association of the Deaf conference, invited to the White House for a ceremony celebrating young activists. But his favorite work happened every Saturday and Sunday at the Harlem Community Center, where he taught ASL to anyone who wanted to learn, children and adults, hearing and deaf, people with deaf family members, and people who just believed language was a bridge worth building. Miss Patricia came to every class, sitting in back with tears of pride. Eleanor's affordable housing project broke ground 6 months after that meeting. The ceremony was massive. 300 families, many already selected for first-round units, local politicians, community leaders, news crews. Eleanor stood at center, flanked by Richard, Devin, Alicia, and Rosa. When it was time for her speech, she signed, and Devin translated, his voice carrying across the crowd through microphones. "This building is not named after me," Eleanor signed, and Devin spoke. "It's named after the people who taught me what matters. It's called the Anderson Community Center for Deaf Services." Devin's eyes went wide. He hadn't known. Rosa gasped, covering her mouth. Alicia, understanding enough, started crying. The community center would house not just apartments, but a full-time ASL education program, free interpreter training for low-income students, deaf-owned businesses given priority for ground-floor retail, a model for inclusive community development. Blackwood Enterprises transformed under Eleanor's renewed leadership. Every board meeting now had professional ASL interpreters. The company actively recruited deaf and hard-of-hearing employees at every level, from entry to executive positions. They partnered with 5 Harlem schools, sponsoring ASL programs and interpreter training. Within a year, over 300 kids learned basic ASL through Blackwood-funded programs. Dr. Wilson took personal responsibility for mentoring Devin, teaching him about business and financial literacy. She introduced him to community leaders, activists, educators, helped him understand that the voice he'd found, both literal and the platform given, carried responsibility. Use it wisely, she told him. Use it to lift others up. Devin did. He spoke at schools about disability rights and inclusion, wrote articles for education journals about ASL education importance in hearing schools, testified before city council about funding for interpreter services in public hospitals and courts. He was 10, then 11, then 12. His voice never wavered. Everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone deserves dignity. Communication is a right, not a privilege. 1 year after that boardroom meeting, Devin returned to the Harlem Community Center where he'd first learned ASL. He sat at the same table where Miss Patricia had taught him. He set up a framed photograph. Miss Patricia, who'd passed 6 months earlier, had left him a letter. "You kept the promise. You gave voice to the voiceless. I'm so proud of who you've become." A young boy, maybe 7, approached nervously. "Excuse me, are you Devin Anderson?" Devin smiled. "I am." "My little brother is deaf. He's 4. I want to learn to talk to him. Can you teach me?" Devin pulled out a chair. "Of course. Let me show you something. This is the sign for I love you. Let's start there." The voiceover returns one final time, quiet and powerful. Sometimes the most important voice in the room is the one nobody invited. Sometimes the greatest change comes from the smallest person. Sometimes all it takes is one brave child to remind us, every person matters. Every voice counts. And true communication isn't about ears or mouths or perfectly formed words. It's about hearts willing to listen, hands willing to bridge gaps, refusing to let anyone be invisible. On screen, text appears. Today, over 500 children have learned ASL through Anderson Community Center programs. Eleanor Blackwood's affordable housing has expanded to 3 additional New York locations. Devin Anderson is now 15 and has interpreted for over 2,000 deaf individuals in legal, medical, and educational settings. The conversation continues. The final image is Devin and Alicia, now 13 and 9, signing to each other at a community event. They're laughing, hands moving in perfect synchronization. Around them, dozens of children, hearing and deaf, are communicating in ASL. The camera slowly pulls back. The community center is full of life, full of voices in every language and form, full of people who've been heard, been seen, been valued. One child stepped in, and the world shifted.